Thank you for joining us today. We are here at the Tensor Q&A webinar. This time we created that is committed just for answering any questions that you may have about applying for a Tensor outreach grant. During this time, we are going to answer any questions that we have received previously from those who are interested in applying for a Tensor program. So we hope that you find this time helpful. And if you have additional questions, we'll give you some contact information to follow up. I would like to introduce the team who will be answering your questions today, starting with myself. My name is Kiera Palma. I am the Director for Programs and Grants Management at MAA. We are also joined by Rachelle DeCoste. She is the Tensor Women and Math Program Director. Thanks for joining us, Rachelle. Also, we have Alicia Prieto-Langarica, who is our newly appointed Tensor Proposal Advisor. She is here specifically to answer any questions folks may have. And then we also have Grace Murrin. She is our Program Specialist at MAA, and she is also here to help you with any questions you may have about submitting your program, specifically working with the Amplifund Grants Management System. So without further ado, let's kick it off with some of the questions that we have for the Tensor program application. All right, our first question. I have never submitted a proposal to the Tensor programs. Tips on how to start drafting my proposals. So I would say, Alicia, folks could start with you, to kind of get the lay of the land for submitting a proposal.
Definitely. So I think that's some really good thing that the MAA is offering is a one-on-one, kind of like office hours, where if you have a proposal and you have an idea and you're thinking about it, you can come and we can talk about it and we can figure out, the details of your proposal and the details of your program. So as I would say, like in an office hours, the first thing is read very well the call for proposals and read and make sure that you answer all the questions that are there. And come prepared with some specific questions that we can work so that we can take advantage of the time together and we can, iron some of those things out and make sure that you have a fantastic proposal. And then any specific questions that you have about your program, please feel free to reach out at me. There's going to be my contact information and everything, and we can figure out times to meet to talk again one-on-one.
Awesome. Thank you. I agree. I'm really glad that we have this resource available for those who are interested, where you can just get that one-on-one time with someone who has gone through this process and can give you all those tips and tricks and that kind of individualized plan to make sure that you submit a great proposal.
Kiera, can I jump right in and just say, for those of you who are experienced proposal writers, I would still reach out to Alicia and take advantage of that. Even if you feel like you're almost done with your proposal, having an extra outside pair of eyes is so valuable. So please, I know Alicia is just really hoping to work with a lot of you out there, and we're excited to have her on the team.
Yes, I'm super excited to learn about all of your programs and all of your ideas and help you out and make them the best that they can be.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, ladies. All right. Question number 2. What are the key indicators of a strong proposal? So what are we really looking for that lets us know that this is going to be a really good project?
I'll jump in and then Alicia can help me out, and you too, Kiera. First of all, I'm going to reiterate something Alicia already said, which is read the website. So sometimes we get proposals that are just missing key sections, and all those sections are there, all the questions are there, the prompts are there, really to get at what your program is all about. So make sure that you address all of the questions and the key points that are listed on each of our web pages. But some of the other really specific details I would say that are sometimes, well, this is terrible. I'm answering this in the negative, but some things that maybe are missing from strong proposals, I'll start with. If you just don't really tell us what the impact of your program will be, if you haven't really articulated who the program is for, and what the impact of the program will be. And that sounds really obvious, but this is, again, a really nice reason to have someone else read your proposal, is you think maybe you articulated it really well and it may not come out as strong as you want. So just make sure that you're making the case for what your program is, enough details, you know, what overall are you trying to accomplish? What are the daily or weekly goals of your program, depending on what the structure of your program is? And then how are you accomplishing the goals? I would say for my program in particular, make sure that it fits the call for the Tensor Women in Math program. So what does that mean? Of course, your program will be for girls or women in math, but it needs to be more than the presence of girls and women in math. It really needs to be about what your program is doing to support women or girls in math and why they need that support and how your program is being effective in that support. And I would say for the SUMMA program, similar, right? Know the audience, know why you're applying to the program that you're applying to. So make sure that that is done really well. Some other strong proposals are ones that are really student focused, making sure that every aspect of your proposal is, and I'm using the term student broadly because you can have a program for graduate students, you can have a program for elementary kids, like anyone who's your target audience. It's usually students of some sort, and they should be throughout that proposal. We want to see a good budget. We want to make sure, and we're going to talk more about this in a little bit, but it needs to be really clear how you're going to use the money from the MAA to have a successful program. Those are my main points. Anybody else?
I'm just gonna reiterate what
Yes.
Rachel is saying. I mean, it makes sense that when we talk about how first the student and then the math, that's exactly how you write that proposal, right? So first, who are the people that this is interesting for? It's not, we all have like really good math ideas and really good math things that we could be doing, right? But how are they addressing the specific needs of the specific population that you're targeting? That's a lot more important, right? So think about the student first, and then the math around the student, and that will come out as a good proposal.
Great. I have nothing to add. I think you two summed that up very well. So we'll just keep moving on. All right, next question. What does an ideal proposal budget look like, and how should it be entered into Amplifund? And so, Rachel, you already kind of alluded to this, but what are we looking for in a program budget and narrative for?
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, I'm gonna leave the Amplifund part to Grace, who is our resident expert, but you know, you have $6,000. You may ask for the full $6,000, you may not. The key, and I've had people ask me in the past, like, is it better if I ask for less? No, actually, it doesn't. In that range, 0 to 6,000, what matters is that you tell us how you're going to use your money and that you're using your money well. And so, you know, when you tell us you're going to use money for food, that's great. Can you tell me a little bit more? Is it snacks? Is it lunch? I am one who believes that food is an integral part of community building. And so, you know, I think food is a great thing to use your money on, but you got to tell me how you're doing it and why it's important to you. Are you buying supplies? Don't just tell us that you need $3,000 for supplies. Please be specific, and very much, we probably won't fund you if you're not specific. Even if you have a great idea, we really need the budget details to know how you're going to spend the money, and how you're spending the money should directly relate to the success of your program. So like I said, food is community building. If that's how you're using it, great. If you are getting t-shirts so that the students all feel like they have some sort of, you know, identity as a group, like, awesome. You could just tell us how you're using the money. Is that, wow, anything else I should add to that? Anybody else? Oh, one thing, can I say again on the negative one? Alicia, I'm sorry. Let me just finish this one thought. You cannot spend money on indirect costs. This is a $6,000 grant, and the $6,000 or however much you apply for needs to go directly to the program. Alicia.
The last thing that I want to say is, again, if you're centering the students, then the budget should reflect that. If you're, I mean, we all would love to have time off and like pay, and we all do a lot and should be paid better. But let's center the student and pay the student first, and like spend the money on the student first. So if that's the main part of your budget, then, and you're very, very specific about how that you're spending it, then that's a good budget.
So that's great direction on what a good budget would look like for a proposal, but let's take a look on how you actually enter that into Amplifund. We have received feedback in the past where folks have been just a little confused on how to do that in the system. So Grace, would you be able to take us through that?
I'm going to bring up my screen here. And we'll be able to take a look live in Amplifund, just with a test application. All right, so here we are in Amplifund. When you apply for Tensor SUMMA or Tensor Women, the process is much the same. This example just happens to be Tensor Women. When you're entering your budget, which will be in this section here, aptly called budget, this is where you can enter your line items and really get specific, as Rachel was requesting, with what the heck those line items mean. So for instance, if you wanted to enter a line item for supply, you would come and click the plus next to supplies. And here we have a small description of, something that this might include. You would name your line item, let's say t-shirts. And the direct cost is going to be $500, let's say. And in your narrative, you would then specify this is, $10 a t-shirt. For 50 participants. If you've gotten a quote from a t-shirt company and you want to go ahead and include that here as an attachment, you can absolutely do that using the attachment option. But this $10 for a t-shirt for 50 participants, that's sufficient. You simply then click create. And all of your line items will then populate in this expense budget. An important thing to note about your expense budget is that your total budget cost cannot exceed $6,000 for Tensor grants. And at the beginning of your application on this first page, project information, you will enter an amount here, award requested. And if that is, say, you're only requesting $5,000. This number here, total budgeted, has to match what you entered first on the project information page in order to successfully submit the application. It'll give you an error otherwise, basically. So that is that page. Alicia or Rachel or Kiera, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think your example was a really great one because it included both the item cost and how many you were buying. And so when you say you're going to buy 50 t-shirts, then in your proposal somewhere, I'm going to assume you have either 50 participants or you have 40 participants and 10, I don't know, other people, probably more like 45. And then you have undergraduates involved with high school students, right? So those numbers, just make sure that they make sense and make sure you're writing enough. Because if there's just t-shirts, $500, it's really not enough information. So I want to just really encourage people again to be specific. And there is a budget narrative later that we're going to talk about, but in this place, make sure that everything really adds up, makes sense and all of that. I mean, it's great, it adds it for you, but makes sense. Full, thorough. Yeah.
And this section, just to reiterate, is just for the funds that you are requesting from the Tensor Foundation. This does not include other funding you might have, funding from your institution. We're going to talk about that in a minute here. This is just for the up to $6,000 that you are requesting from the Tensor Foundation. And it's important to be accurate in this section because this is the budget you will be reporting against should you be funded by the organization. So the more specific you can get here, the easier it's actually going to be if you are funded to do your reporting updates back to the MAA.
Perfect. Yeah, consistency with your proposal and getting all the details. So justifying, that expense. Those are the two key items to keep in mind when doing your budget. So thank you, Grace. Thank you, Rachel. All right, let's go to our next question. Can you explain the difference between a letter of recommendation and institutional commitment narrative? Now, these are two separate required documents that folks will need to submit with their proposal. And I know there has been some confusion in the past about what we're looking for each of these documents. So let's take a little bit of time to discuss what exactly we're looking for when we say a letter of recommendation and an institutional commitment, because the two can get, a little confusing. I know one is just like a department chair letter of recommendation or a high school or middle school that you're working with. And then another is financially, how is your institution, supporting your proposal, right? So maybe we can discuss that a little bit further.
Yeah, I think that's a great start, Kiera. When you look at Amplifund, which we'll do in just a minute, you'll see that these are both required. So you must have a letter of recommendation from your institution that says that they are supporting you. And, this relates to another question that we get a lot, which is about, what does the commitment have to be on behalf of your institution? So we ask for every institution to make some financial commitment, but that doesn't necessarily mean monetary, right? So maybe that sounds confusing, but in that particular response from your institution, we want them to say that they're in support of your program, that they agree that this is a good idea, that they'll provide the space perhaps for that program, because one way that an institution can support your program without actual funding is by letting you use the space, by letting you use the copier and all that kinds of stuff. That's what I would refer to as in-kind support.
In kind, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you had mentioned high school or middle school. So a lot of times we have folks who are plan to have a program with schools in their in their area, right? They want to do outreach to schools, and it really helps strengthen your proposal if you already have a commitment from folks in those schools. And so having them write a letter that just says, yes, we think this is a great program and we want to have our students participate in it is really helpful for us to know for sure that you have those connections with the school. Same thing if you're working with an office on campus, I would say. Sometimes people are working with particular groups on campus that are run through some other division. That's really helpful too. So those are just kind of the ones that I would say are, this is a great idea, we really support this, and they just strengthen your proposal. The one that's really necessary is someone who's in an administrative position in your institution agreeing to support your program. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds right. Yeah.
And then
So
oh, go ahead, sorry.
I just want to, so that's good for the letter of recommendation.
Right.
And then for the institutional commitment.
For the
Yes.
institutional, oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Alicia.
Oh, I was going to say for the institutional commitment, there's a bunch of things that can happen. As Rachel said, it doesn't have to be money, right? But it can be something that says you're going to get the time, right? So if you're going to get a course release, or you're going to if they're going to provide the space for the program to run, if they're for example, for a program, I remember having the school commit to transportation from the students from the high school to the university, which is a lot more costly than you might think. So like, even if it's not money, they still have to pay somebody to bring the students. It can be food if they're going to supply food. It can be supplies as well. Like maybe you guys are going to need paper, computers, use of computer lab, anything like that could be, it can go on the institutional commitment narrative, and it could be institutional commitment from both institutions, right? So it could be two things that are like your university is going to provide this, but then the high school or middle school that you're going to be working with is going to provide this and that, right? One thing that most of the middle schools and high school need to provide is the time for the professor in the middle school and high school. Because as I learned, you cannot just like be in charge of kids that don't have a person that is in charge of them, legally, right? So I cannot just like come in and then everybody disappears. So there has to be some commitment that this teacher is going to be there with you and all of these things. So those are things that you can put in the institutional commitment narrative.
Maybe Grace can help us out, and maybe this will be further clarified if we look at the Amplifund page and where folks can upload those resources.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Grace.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So once again, here we are in the application portal. We are under application forms. And again, this example happens to be the Tensor Women application, but Tensor SUMMA is very much the same, if not identical, in this section. So in this section of the application, you're going to come down here to letters of recommendation. In the letters of recommendation section, this is where you are going to upload as one PDF file. You can put multiple letters in the same PDF file, but as one PDF file, the letters of recommendation. So this is at least one letter from your institution. So your department chair, your an institutional administrator, dean, whatever the appropriate person might be. And then if you are working with a high school, a middle school, a community center, you know, something like that, you should have another letter in here that is from appropriate leadership personnel at that institution. And so this should indicate recommendation of your leadership as the project director and their support for the project in general. And then in this signed letter, they would also detail what this monetary in kind or actual monetary contribution is in this letter. Additionally, as you scroll down to budgets, there's this section called institutional commitment. So this is where the narrative of what the heck they're providing you is. So this would be, we're going to have use of classrooms A, B, and C on 3 nights a week for the first semester of school. Or this would be participants will be able to get 1 meal comped in the meal hall on campus, or a course release, or, you know, whatever the institution, your home institution is providing that lessens the overall cost of the project. So this is a narrative section. You want to be as detailed as possible about what this is and how it will benefit the project. Additionally, in this section, we ask that you go ahead and outline the total budget for the project. Sometimes we have projects that have gotten funding from a variety of sources, not just the Tensor Foundation and their home institution. And so it's helpful for us when we're reviewing applications to have a greater understanding of the larger picture. So with, you know, a project, Tensor Women might be funding $6,000 of participant support materials, t-shirts, supplies, graphing calculators, something like that. But then another foundation or institution might be providing, paying for all of the transportation costs or paying for a speaker to come in or something like that. So we'd like to see in this narrative a breakdown of kind of what those other pieces are, so that we can better understand what the impact of the Tensor Women or Tensor SUMMA money is on that particular project. And so this upload, it's again, please use uploaded 1 PDF file, and you would upload that here before going to the next screen, which is what we already looked at, which is that budget, the individual for your up to $6,000 Tensor grant line item breakdown of what you're using Tensor funds for. Anyone additional thoughts?
No, I think that was a great explanation. Thank you, Grace. And we try to make things very clear here, but we understand that sometimes there may be a little bit of confusion, and additional clarification would be needed. So hopefully with this webinar, that is exactly what we have done. And if folks have additional questions, as always, please feel free to reach out to us. All right, so we can go ahead and go to our next question. Ooh, what are some red flags that you've seen in a proposal? So what are some things that we have seen in previous proposals where it immediately just gives us a little pause, or we have additional questions, or it's just an outright, you know, this is just not going to work for this program, and we're not going to push this for funding. So Rachel, Alicia, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, okay. I'll start, but I'm sure I'm gonna miss some stuff. I think the biggest red flag for me would be if you're not telling me why these programs, what are you gonna do specifically for the population that you're supposed to be targeting, right? So if your program is just a generic program and doesn't have anything to do with women in math, then I mean, then it's not proper for the Tensor Women Grant. If you're not doing anything special for underrepresented minorities, then it's not proper for the Tensor SUMMA grant. Maybe also another thing is, I mean, we all do this where we have a proposal and then we want to like use it for different funding agencies. That might be okay if you modify it and make sure that now you have all the specifics that Tensor SUMMA or Tensor needs, right? And all of those things. If all the money goes to personnel, that's also a big red flag. Like money, as we've been saying before, right? You're centering students, then your budget should be centering students, so the money should be going for students. That doesn't mean that there should not be money for personnel. That just means that the majority of the money should go to the student directly. If the personnel is not math related or they're just outside, like, I mean, that doesn't mean that this cannot come from an engineering department, but it should be for a mathematics project, and there should be some heavy mathematics being done in the project, right? It cannot just be like, we're gonna sit down and like paint a lot of things, and then we're gonna like practice the multiplication table. Like, you know, it has to be very like mathematically centered. Anything else I might be forgetting?
That was a great start. And I will not claim that this is comprehensive between all of us either, right? I mean, there are some other things that we may have forgotten, but that was a great start, I think. Great. So one of the other things I was thinking is just not enough detail in general. So sometimes people will say we're going to have a 5-day camp in the summer, and every day we're going to do some math, and then we're going to do this and that. Well, what is the math that you're doing, right? So really think about the fact that we know nothing about your program, and you have to convince us, you know, that you should get the funding. So give us enough information. I think that's often one of the big red flags that we see. But I think that's a pretty good summary, unless Kiera has anything she can add.
No, I agree. I think in summation, I'll just say that through our directors and our panelists, we can truly tell when a program is organically a math education program or when a program was just kind of generalized and created to say, oh, this is for math. Oh, this is for this target audience. We know when it's not. And this could be something that you probably recycled from another project to fit into our criteria. So just want to give a heads up for those who are applying that we can definitely tell the difference in those types of proposals.
And I remembered one other thing that relates to what you just said, Kiera. So also sometimes there are really amazing programs out there and people want to recreate that program at their institution. You have to tell us what it is about your institution that's going to make that program different, right? Because if your target audience, no matter what, is different, right? If you're at a different institution. So really, if you're recreating someone, or I don't know the right terminology, but if you're using another program as your model, don't just assume that we know how successful that model is and they can pick it up and put it down, right? So think about making sure that you're really have a compelling argument about why this program works for it relates back to what Alicia started us with, your target population.
Exactly. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Next question. What are some metrics or data that should be included in a proposal? I know we've already discussed about being detailed and making sure that we have some great impact, included in our proposal, but what's some metrics or data that kind of overall should generally be included in a successful proposal?
Maybe I'll start with this one and the rest of you can chime in. I really want to know numbers, right? I want to know if you have a program and you're saying that you're going to increase the number of women undergraduate math majors, what is the population from which you are drawing, and how many do you currently have, and what do you think the impact will be? You have to, again, convince us, right, that your program will have will be able to have an impact. So really making sure that you give us concrete numbers so that if we were to go to your webpage, they would agree with what you're telling us, but we probably won't go to your webpage. So make sure it's all in that particular proposal. If you're looking at outreach programs, talk about the populations of students that you're trying to connect with. I think that kind of data is really important, and that's more data than metrics. So I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in on that one.
Do you think that I can think about for metrics is if there's something that if you're running a middle school program and then something that you could do is look at their standardized tests before and after, that's what one of your goals is, right? To improve those things. So those are some metrics that you can pull out. Something else might be retention rates, or like those are some, but I think it's data and metrics. Now I'm getting data and metrics confused, but the metrics might be like, you know, what is it that, what impact do you want to make, and how are you going to show that you're making that impact?
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, thank you, ladies. But what kind of projects are not supported by the Tensor program? Projects that we've probably seen that are perhaps excellent projects, but
Right.
just not quite aligned with what we want to fund. You know, again, we fund outreach programs, math education outreach programs for students, middle school, high school, and post-secondary. But what are some examples of projects that folks, this just wouldn't be the best funding opportunity for them?
Kiera, I'm so glad you said it that way, because I think that's really important. You know, if we reject a project, I've been talking a lot about things that might be missing from your proposal, but they might get rejected because they just don't fit. And so we don't want people to waste their time and apply to us if they just don't fit. There are other resources out there that you might be better suited towards. So some of those examples are, if you're looking to develop a course that's related to, say, diversity in mathematics, and you want funding for a course release, that's not our programs, right? We don't actually fund course releases. As Alicia has said earlier, you know, we're looking at projects that are student focused. So is the support going more directly to the students? And while developing courses is student focused, you're teaching students, it's not the direct focus that we're talking about. So I think something like a course release or funding research on students, while again, super awesome, valid, interesting things, just not what we are able to fund right now. You know, anything where you're not directly interacting with students, I would say, is not something that we can fund. And I think people need to pay attention to the fact too, often we hear from high school educators, on their own, unfortunately, we can't fund projects from high school educators. They have to be partnered with university. And when I say university, I mean higher education, college, 2-year colleges. And our funding is restricted to the US territories and Canadian institutions of higher ed. So if you have a fantastic program out there for high school students, find your local college and try and partner with someone there, because one of the PIs really does have to be someone who's an educator in an institution of higher ed.
Yeah, completely agree. Not much to add. I mean, we don't, Tensor doesn't support programs that are not math, but that should have been obvious. And like not projects that are not targeting the populations that that they're supposed to be targeting. So if the projects are very generic math or non-math and just science related, those are not they can be wonderful programs, but not the kind of programs that they're going to get funded.
Yeah, nothing to add there. I think y'all covered it. So next question, here we go. And this is the one that kind of touches on metrics and data that we discussed earlier, but what would make a strong evaluation plan in a proposal? Evaluation plan is a requirement in the proposals that our panelists and directors are looking for. We don't want this to kind of be a last minute add-on. This needs to be something that was thoughtfully included and should have been, you know, created in tandem with the project, right? So ladies, what do you look for when you want to see an evaluation plan in a proposal?
I feel like
Alicia,
I've been,
Rachel.
yeah, I know, I've been talking a lot, so but I don't want to put Alicia on the spot either. So I can start, and then you can Is that okay?
Yeah.
So I first want to say this is a $6,000 grant. So you're not applying for an NSF grant when you're building in funding to hire an external evaluator. Clearly that is not possible here. But as Kiera said, you want to think about this as you're thinking about your goals and objectives for your project, because if those are your goals and objectives, how are you going to measure them, right? Which gets to the metrics and the data. So tell us the compelling story, provide us the data to start with, and then tell us where you think you're going to go and how are you going to evaluate that. We want to know that your program is a success. You have to define that before you start. So how are you going to do that? Are you going to, what tools, I guess, are you going to use? And we don't, I would say we're not prescribing what those tools should be. We want you to think about the best tools to measure your particular outcomes, but they have to be there and they have to match in some way what it is that you're doing, you know? So are you doing pre and post surveys? Are you doing check-in points? You know, there has to be some sort of follow-up. And when does that happen? And how does that happen? And how are you going to ensure, you know, often if you have a short event, are you just asking students at the end of the week, or will you be able to get in touch with them? You have to sort of give us details, I would say, about that too. Not just this, I will do this, but how is that going? How are you going to be successful with that? You know, I mean, I think if things are delivered in person, online, there are very different ways that you should go about evaluating your program. Maybe that's a good start.
Yeah, I recently had to design a class, and I was thinking about this in the same way that you define a class, right? You do the learning objectives. So as somebody that had never designed a class, I started designing the class and then later thinking, man, how am I going to evaluate if my students learn what I said that they should be learning? When it would have been much easier to, from the very beginning, think, this is what I want them to learn, and this is how I'm going to test or evaluate their learning, right? So this is my pitch for saying, reiterating what Kiera was saying, that do not leave this to the very end. From the very beginning, think, what are my goals and how do I make sure that I'm going to achieve those goals, and how am I going to measure my progress towards those goals, which is the same thing that we do in class, right? So if you started your thinking for your project that way, it's going to come very naturally and very like, it'll just come very easy, and you will have a good evaluation plan, hopefully.
Great. Excellent. I think, dare I say, yeah, that was our final question for this webinar. Right now, you'll see contact information for all of the ladies on this webinar. I will also add that Candace Price is our Tensor SUMMA director. She's currently on maternity leave, but we definitely want to let folks know that she will be available once the Tensor SUMMA program for this cycle gets awarded. So she'll be your main contact. We really hope that this was helpful for everyone. The questions that were included in the webinar are questions that we've seen in the past. We also have FAQs on all of the Tensor program websites, so we encourage you to check that out. We also have an Amplifund training video on the website, so that will help you with kind of the technical aspect of submitting your application, which I believe we're gonna update soon, if I'm not mistaken, Grace. So lots of resources we have for folks to make sure that they are successful in submitting their proposal. And of course, any questions you have that have not been answered, we invite you to contact us to learn more. So ladies, any parting words, anything else as we wrap up?
Thank you so much, Kiera and Grace and Alicia. This has been hopefully a good conversation for the folks who are listening. Definitely, I mean, I'll just reiterate, obviously, reach out, any one of us. And if you reach out to me and I think you should be talking to somebody else, I'll put you in touch with them. So feel free to just, please do reach out and really try to get that proposal prepared a few days before the 12th so that Alicia can help you out too.
Yes, I'm excited to start in this position, and I'm excited to help people write this proposal. So please reach out, and thank you for putting this together. Grace.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks, everyone. We hope to read your proposal soon.